Hello friend, welcome to back my channel Old Coins History. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. So let's get it started. The 1989 United States of America $quarter coin stands as a representative example of the long-running Washington quarter series, a coinage tradition that by that year had already spanned more than half a century and remained an essential part of daily American commerce. This coin, valued at 25 cents, is one of the most familiar denominations in U.S. currency, and in 1989 it was produced in massive numbers to meet the ongoing demand for small change across the nation. Its design, unchanged in its core elements since the early 1930s, reflected a historical continuity that linked the economic and cultural life of late 20th century America with the commemorative intentions of the early Depression era. The Washington Quarter series began in 1932 to celebrate the bicentennial of George Washington's birth, replacing the standing Liberty Quarter which had been struck since 1916. The design competition of 1931-1932 resulted in the selection of John Flanagan's portrait of Washington for the obverse and his heraldic eagle reverse design, both of which became iconic in American numismatics. When the first quarters of this type were issued, they were struck in 90% silver and 10% copper, giving them intrinsic precious metal value. This silver composition continued until the mid-1960s, but rising silver prices and coin shortages led to the Coinage Act of 1965, which eliminated silver from circulating quarters and replaced it with a copper-nickel clad composition. By 1989, the clad quarter was in its 25th year of production, and the coin's specifications, a weight of 5.67 grams, a diameter of 24.26 millimeters, and a reeded edge, were standard across the mints. In 1989, quarters were struck at three primary facilities: the Philadelphia Mint with no mint mark, the Denver Mint with a D mint mark, and the San Francisco Mint with an S mint mark for proof coins. Circulating quarters from Philadelphia and Denver were produced in the hundreds of millions, reflecting the enormous demand in both retail commerce and banking distribution systems. The San Francisco Mint's proof quarters, intended for collectors, were struck with specially polished dies and planchettes to achieve a mirror-like finish and sharp detail. Each mint facility had a specific role. Philadelphia and Denver handled general circulation needs, while San Francisco catered to the numismatic market through annual proof sets. The minting process in 1989 involved several precise steps. Blank copper-nickel planchettes were punched from clad strips, weighed, inspected, and then fed into presses where the obverse and reverse dies struck them under high pressure, imparting the familiar Washington portrait on one side and the heraldic eagle on the other. The dies themselves were based on master hubs that traced their lineage back to Flanagan's original models, though they had undergone minor refinements over the decades to improve clarity and strike quality. The obverse of the 1989 quarter features a left-facing bust of George Washington, with the word, Liberty, arching above his head, the national motto, In God We Trust, positioned to the left, and the date, 1989, below the truncation of his bust. On coins from Denver and San Francisco, the mint mark appears just to the right of the ribbon in Washington's hair, above the date. Washington's portrait is rendered with a dignity and simplicity intended to convey both the man's historical stature and the enduring ideals of the Republic. The reverse bears the image of a heraldic eagle, wings spread, clutching a bundle of arrows in its talons, with two olive branches curving upward from below. The legend, United States of America, arcs above the eagle, E pluribus unum, is inscribed between the wings, and the denomination, $quarter, runs along the lower rim. This combination of martial and peaceful symbols, arrows and olive branches, was meant to express the balance of strength and diplomacy in the American spirit. Economically, the 1989 quarter functioned during a period of relative stability in U.S. coinage. Inflation in the 1980s had not yet rendered the quarter too small for everyday purchasing power, and it remained a key denomination for vending machines, parking meters, payphones, laundromats, and countless cash transactions. Unlike the penny, whose production cost was approaching or exceeding its face value, the clad quarter remained profitable for the mint to produce. In collector terms, most 1989 quarters in circulated condition hold only face value today due to their large mintages, but uncirculated examples, especially those in the highest grades Mississippi 67 or higher, and deep cameo-proof specimens can attract interest. Error coins, such as off-center strikes, double dies, and clipped planchettes, from 1989 are also of interest to numismatists and can command higher prices depending on rarity and visual appeal. The cultural symbolism of the 1989 quarter lay not just in its imagery but in its ubiquity. It was a tangible, daily connection to the nation's first president, a reminder of American heritage carried in pockets, purses, and cash registers across the country. While by 1989 the Washington quarter design was considered traditional, even old-fashioned, it would continue for another decade before being replaced by the state quarters program in 1999, which dramatically revitalized public interest in the denomination. Thus, the 1989 quarter occupies a transitional position in U.S. coin history. It belongs firmly to the pre-state quarters era but was struck in an age when collecting was gaining renewed popularity thanks to modern mint products. From a technical standpoint, the coin's copper nickel-clad structure gave it durability and resistance to tarnish, although over time, circulation wear would dull the luster and smooth the finer details of Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers. Freshly minted 1989 quarters displayed a bright, silvery sheen from the nickel, and the reeded edge, 119 reeds in total, served both as a security feature and a tactile identifier for the visually impaired. The mint's quality control in 1989 was high, but the sheer scale of production meant that minor striking variations inevitably occurred, providing material for variety collectors to study. Numismatically, the 1989 quarter's interest lies less in rarity and more in its role as a marker of its era. The close of the Reagan presidency, the last years of the Cold War, and a period when U.S. coinage was functionally stable but on the cusp of a major commemorative shift. Collectors who specialize in assembling complete date and mintmark sets of Washington quarters will include both the 1989P and 1989D issues, and proof set collectors will seek the 1989S. High-grade business strikes are scarcer due to the wear of heavy circulation, and grading services like PCGS and NGC certify such coins for the registry set market. In sum, the 1989 United States quarter dollar is not just a 25-cent piece, it is a physical artifact of late 20th century America, linking the artistry of the 1930s with the practical economics of the 1980s, and carrying forward the image of Washington and the eagle into the modern age. Its story encompasses artistry, metallurgy, mass production, economic function, and cultural meaning, a testament to how even the most ordinary objects can embody a rich history. The 1988 United States quarter dollar, part of the long-running Washington quarter series, stands as a small yet significant piece of late 20th century American numismatic history, bridging the period before the revolutionary state quarters program of 1999 with the more traditional coinage style that had dominated U.S. quarters since 1932. Issued by the United States Mint in the final decades of the 20th century, the 1988 quarter continued the established design featuring the left-facing bust of George Washington, the nation's first president, on its obverse. This portrait, originally sculpted by John Flanagan and first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the bicentennial of Washington's birth, retained its simple yet authoritative style, with Washington's facial features finely detailed, the firm jawline, the tied-back hair in a colonial queue, and the slightly furrowed brow, conveying dignity and leadership. The obverse inscriptions include the word, Liberty, prominently above Washington's head, a placement that symbolically ties the first president to the nation's foundational ideals. To the left, the national motto, In God We Trust, appears in smaller but clear capital letters, and the date, 1988, is centered at the bottom, directly beneath the bust. Above the date, depending on the issuing mint, one finds either no mint mark, Philadelphia Mint, a small D, Denver Mint, or an S, for proof issues struck at the San Francisco Mint. The reverse design, which by 1988 had been in continuous use for over 55 years, depicts the heraldic eagle, a stylized version of the Great Seal of the United States, standing proudly with outstretched wings, its head turned toward the viewer's left, clutching a bundle of arrows in its talons as a symbol of readiness to defend the nation, while an olive branch rests below as an emblem of peace. The eagle is framed by the inscriptions, United States of America, along the top rim, E pluribus unum, just above its head, meaning, out of many, one, and quarter dollar, along the bottom, denoting its face value. The coin's composition in 1988 was the standard clad construction adopted in 1965 after the removal of silver from circulating quarters, an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, giving the coin a silvery appearance while maintaining durability for circulation. Each piece measured 24.3 millimeters in diameter, weighed 5.67 grams, and had a reeded edge, a feature historically intended to deter the shaving of precious metal from coins, but retained as a traditional tactile element. The 1988 quarters were struck in large numbers to meet the needs of everyday commerce, with mintage figures reaching hundreds of millions. Approximately 562 million from Philadelphia, no mint mark, 596 million from Denver, D. mint mark, and about 3.2 million proof coins from San Francisco, which were specially struck with polished dies and planchettes to produce mirror-like surfaces and sharp details for collectors. In circulation, the 1988 quarter was a common sight in pockets, vending machines, laundromats, and cash registers across America, representing a familiar piece of pocket change in an era before widespread credit card and digital payment use. While most examples hold only face value due to their high mintages, certain well-preserved pieces, coins with full strike details, or examples graded Mississippi 65 or higher by professional grading services can attract collector interest, as can coins with striking errors such as off-center strikes, double dies, or missing clad layers. The 1988 quarter also reflects a transitional period in U.S. coinage aesthetics, a time before the mint began experimenting with frequent design changes, and it marks the end of a purely federal, non-commemorative quarter tradition that would soon give way to the state-by-state and national park designs of the 21st century. For collectors today, the 1988 quarter can be appreciated not only for its role in commerce but also as a snapshot of American monetary design continuity, mint production efficiency in the late 1980s, and the enduring symbolism of George Washington's portrait and the heraldic eagle, icons that had by then graced the nation's 25-cent piece for more than half a century. The United States of America 1 dime of 2006 represents a continuation of a long-running denomination that traces its origins back to the Coinage Act of 1792, which established the dime as a 10-cent piece, 1/10 of a U.S. dollar, in the nation's decimal-based currency system, and by 2006 it was firmly entrenched as a ubiquitous component of daily commerce, small transactions, vending machine payments, and change-making in retail. The 2006 dime belongs to the Roosevelt dime series, first issued in 1946 to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt, whose image dominates the obverse with a left-facing portrait based on John R. Sinek's original design, which features careful sculpting of Roosevelt's facial features, his distinctive hairline, and the dignified, forward-looking pose that symbolized both his wartime leadership and his role in championing causes such as the March of Dimes polio campaign. Above the portrait is the word, Liberty, placed prominently in block capitals to echo the ideological foundation of the nation, while the motto, In God We Trust, appears to Roosevelt's left, from the viewer's perspective beneath the chin, a location retained consistently since the series began, and the date 2006 is placed to the right of the portrait, flanked by the mintmark indicating its origin, either P for Philadelphia, D for Denver, or S for San Francisco in proof strikes, while the designer's initials, JS, for John Sinek appear just below the Roosevelt truncation. The reverse, equally iconic, depicts a central torch symbolizing liberty and enlightenment, flanked by an olive branch on the left representing peace and an oak branch on the right representing strength and independence, with the inscription, United States of America, curved along the upper rim and the denomination spelled as 1 dime, along the lower rim, while the national motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, 1, runs horizontally across the midsection between the symbolic flora. The 2006 dime, like all modern U.S. dimes since 1965, is composed of a clad construction, a pure copper core sandwiched between outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel, which gives the coin its silvery appearance while maintaining durability and cost efficiency, and it measures 17.91 mm in diameter, 1.35 mm in thickness, with a reeded edge consisting of 118 tiny grooves, both for tactile recognition and to deter historical practices of shaving off small amounts of precious metal from coins. Mintages for 2006 were substantial, with the Philadelphia and Denver facilities producing hundreds of millions of circulation strikes, reflecting both high demand for small change in everyday commerce and the efficiency of modern coining presses capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute, while the San Francisco Mint struck proof coins in both standard copper nickel-clad and .900 fine silver for collectors as part of the annual proof sets, each with mirror-like fields and frosted devices achieved through specialized die treatment. While 2006 dimes are common in circulation and carry a face value of 10 cents, numismatically they hold interest in the form of high-grade uncirculated examples, particularly those graded Mississippi 67 or higher by professional services such as PCGS or NGC. With full torch FT or full bands FB designations, terms denoting sharply struck horizontal lines on the torch bands, which are relatively scarce due to strike weakness in mass production, and collectors also look for errors such as off-center strikes, double dies, or clad layer missing pieces that can command premiums well above face value. Historically, the 2006 dime is part of the post-1999 era when the U.S. Mint, while focused on state quarter production, continued regular output of Roosevelt dimes with minimal design changes, the only alterations being minor die refinements over decades, and it illustrates how the denomination has retained the same design for over half a century, reflecting a deep cultural attachment to Roosevelt's legacy and a lack of political or aesthetic pressure to update the motif. Economically, by 2006 inflation had reduced the purchasing power of the dime compared to mid-20th century levels, yet it remained a practical unit for pricing, especially in sales tax adjustments, parking meters, and various coin-operated services, and in global comparison the U.S. dime's persistence parallels similar small denomination coins in other countries that retain national leaders' portraits for decades. In the broader numismatic field, the 2006 dime is a teaching tool for understanding modern minting technology, its clad structure, mass production methods, and intricate engraving tolerances, and serves as an accessible entry point for new collectors, often forming part of circulation finds that inspire interest in coin collecting. It also connects to a much older tradition of U.S. silver coinage, since pre-1965 dimes were struck in 90% silver and are now prized for bullion and historical value, while the post-1965 copper-nickel dimes like the 2006 edition carry primarily face value in circulation unless preserved in exceptional condition. Ultimately, the United States 1 dime of 2006 encapsulates a blend of historical continuity, symbolic artistry, industrial precision, and everyday utility, standing as a miniature artifact of early 21st century American life, its small size belying the wealth of history and meaning it contains for historians, economists, and collectors alike, and it continues to circulate widely, a reminder in pocket change of both Roosevelt's enduring influence and the quiet resilience of the nation's smallest regularly issued coin denomination. The United States of America 1 dime of 2020 is a modern circulation coin that belongs to the long-running Roosevelt dime series, first introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt shortly after his death, commemorating his leadership during the Great Depression and World War II, as well as his support for the March of Dimes polio campaign, a public health initiative that became forever linked to his legacy. By 2020, the dime's design had remained essentially unchanged for 74 years, with the obverse featuring John R. Sinek's left-facing portrait of Roosevelt rendered with fine detail, short, combed-back hair, a serious yet forward-looking expression, and clean, well-defined lines, encircled by the inscriptions, Liberty, at the left edge, In God We Trust, in smaller capital letters just below Roosevelt's chin, the date 2020 positioned to the right, and the mint mark either P for Philadelphia, D for Denver, or S for San Francisco proofs just above the date, while Sinek's initials, JS, remain subtly placed at the base of the neck. The reverse continues the symbolic imagery of a central torch representing liberty and enlightenment, flanked on the left by an olive branch symbolizing peace and on the right by an oak branch symbolizing strength and independence, all surrounded by the upper inscription, United States of America, the lower inscription, 1 dime, and the national motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, 1, placed horizontally between the torch and the branches, with finely engraved details such as the flame's pointed tips, the textured bark of the oak, and the delicate veining on the olive leaves. The 2020 dime, like all U.S. dimes minted since 1965, is a clad coin made with an inner core of pure copper bonded to outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel, producing a silvery appearance while maintaining high durability, a total weight of 2.268 grams, a diameter of 17.91 millimeters, a thickness of 1.35 millimeters, and a reeded edge with 118 small grooves both for tactile identification and to deter past practices of shaving precious metal. Production in 2020 was historically notable because the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted U.S. mint operations, temporarily reducing output in early months, yet by year's end, Philadelphia and Denver facilities had still produced hundreds of millions of circulation strikes, while San Francisco produced smaller quantities of high-quality clad and .900 fine silver-proof coins for collectors in annual proof sets, silver-proof sets, and special mint sets, with proof versions exhibiting deeply mirrored fields and frosted devices achieved by laser-etched dies. For collectors, the 2020 dime is considered common in circulation but sought after in pristine mint state grades, especially Mississippi 68 or higher, with special interest in coins designated full torch FT, or full bands FB, meaning the horizontal bands on the torch are sharply and fully struck, an indication of die condition and precise striking pressure. Notable varieties and errors from 2020 include off-center strikes, misaligned dies, die chips, and the occasional, missing clad layer. coin where the nickel layer did not bond properly, leaving a copper-colored surface, errors that can command substantial premiums. Historically, the 2020 dime sits within the broader narrative of U.S. coinage stability, as the Roosevelt design has resisted major redesign efforts despite modern initiatives to update other denominations like the quarter and dollar, largely due to the cultural and political significance attached to Roosevelt's image and the coin's functional reliability in commerce. In terms of purchasing power, inflation has reduced the dime's buying capacity compared to mid-20th century levels, yet it remains a vital fractional unit in cash transactions, vending machines, toll booths, and coin-operated devices, and its small, compact size has kept it both practical and cost-efficient to produce. Technologically, the 2020 dime reflects modern minting precision, computer-aided engraving, high-speed coin presses capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute, and strict quality control measures that ensure uniformity across hundreds of millions of pieces. For beginning collectors, the 2020 dime is an accessible entry point, easily found in change yet offering an array of collectible possibilities through high-grade examples, proof issues, and error coins, while for historians it is a tangible piece of early 21st century American monetary history, carrying forward symbols and inscriptions that have become embedded in national identity. Furthermore, the coin connects to the older pre-1965 silver dimes, reminding collectors of a time when the same denomination carried intrinsic bullion value, and its modern copper-nickel counterpart, like the 2020 issue, serves more as a utilitarian token backed by trust in the U.S. government. Thus, the United States 1 dime of 2020 is not merely a small coin worth 10 cents, but a miniature canvas of American symbolism, industrial craftsmanship, and historical continuity, reflecting both the challenges of the year it was struck, marked by global disruption, and the enduring resilience of a design and denomination that has now circulated, almost unchanged, for nearly 3/4 of a century. In the year 1776, the territory that would soon become the United States of America was engulfed in the defining struggle of its history, the Revolutionary War, with 13 British colonies along the Atlantic seaboard united in defiance against the rule of King George III, a political and military rebellion sparked by a decade of disputes over taxation, representation, and imperial authority, culminating on July 4, 1776, when the Second Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia's State House, later renamed Independence Hall, a pivotal moment that not only marked the formal severance of political ties with Britain but also ignited the long process of nation-building in every sphere, including the realm of coinage and currency, which at the time of independence was a chaotic mix of foreign silver and gold coins, colonial paper money, and barter, for the colonies lacked a central mint or unified monetary system. Instead, the economy relied heavily on the Spanish milled dollar, also called the piece of 8, which was a large silver coin minted in the Spanish Americas, and which could be physically cut into halves, quarters, and eighths to make small change, practices that effectively gave Americans an informal grasp of denominations equivalent to what would later become the U.S. half-dollar. But in 1776, no coin officially called a United States half-dollar existed because the United States Mint would not be established until 1792 under the Coinage Act passed by Congress and signed by President George Washington, with production beginning in 1793 and the first official silver half-dollars appearing in 1794, bearing the flowing hair design. Nonetheless, 1776 was a year of significant monetary developments, most famously the issuance of Continental currency paper notes authorized by the Continental Congress to finance the war effort, and the creation of the enigmatic 1776 dated Continental currency coin or medal, a large piece struck in pewter, brass, or silver, whose exact origin remains debated by historians. Some argue it was minted in America as a prototype for a future silver dollar, possibly designed by Benjamin Franklin, while others suggest it may have been struck in Europe as a commemorative token, featuring the inscription, Continental currency, a sundial with the motto, Mind Your Business, and a chain of 13 linked circles representing the unity of the original states, each inscribed with the name of a colony. While this piece was dollar-sized and not a half-dollar, it stands as one of the very few numismatic artifacts directly tied to the year 1776, and provides a symbolic bridge between the revolutionary spirit and the later coinage system, in which the half-dollar would become a staple denomination for over 2 centuries. When the mint finally began producing half-dollars in 1794, the flowing hair type featured liberty with long, unbound hair on the obverse and a small eagle within a wreath on the reverse, struck in .892 fine silver, weighing 13.48 grams, with a diameter of 32.5 millimeters, and these early half-dollars were produced in very low quantities due to limited minting capacity, yet the denomination grew in importance, undergoing numerous design changes: draped bust, capped bust, seated liberty, barber, walking liberty, Franklin, and Kennedy, each reflecting the artistry, politics, and economic conditions of its era. Throughout all these changes, 1776 remained a potent national symbol, representing independence, liberty, and the founding ideals, and it was this symbolic power that inspired the creation of the dual-dated 1776-1976 bicentennial Kennedy half-dollar 2 centuries later, struck to commemorate the 200th anniversary of American independence, with circulation strikes minted in copper nickel-clad and special collector editions in 40% silver, the obverse still bearing Gilroy Roberts's portrait of President John F. Kennedy, introduced in 1964 after his assassination, and the reverse redesigned by Seth G. Huntington to depict Independence Hall, the site of the Declaration's adoption, with the inscriptions, 200 Years of Freedom, and, In God We Trust, a design choice that explicitly tied the half-dollar to the events of 1776 in the minds of millions of Americans. These bicentennial halves were issued in vast quantities, over 500 million pieces across both 1975 and 1976, ensuring that they entered everyday commerce while also being saved in large numbers by collectors and the general public, thus becoming the most common coin directly referencing 1776 in U.S. numismatics. And over the decades, the 1776-1976 half-dollar has remained a tangible, accessible link to the revolution for modern Americans, serving as both a commemorative object and a circulating coin, a piece of art and history in pocket change, a reminder of how far the nation had come since those desperate days of 1776 when independence was a gamble and coinage a patchwork of foreign issues and experimental tokens. Indeed, for numismatists, studying the 1776 half-dollar, whether in the form of the continental currency pieces, the theoretical role of Spanish halves in colonial commerce, the absence of an actual mint in 1776, or the later bicentennial issues, offers a journey through the full arc of American monetary history, illustrating how one date, 1776, can carry layers of meaning across centuries, from a symbol of rebellion and unity to a marketing touchstone for modern commemoratives, embodying in metal the enduring story of the United States.